Hello, 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 everyone. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another National Park stream. Welcome to part 24 of our National Park series here in beautiful California here today. And today we're going to be covering Kings Canyon National Park, which is jointly administered along with Sequoia National Park. They're basically right next to each other, but we're going to be talking about Kings Canyon today, the least visited of the two national parks in its complex. So I hope you're all doing well here today and we explore Kings Canyon National Park. So we're here in Modesto, California, just south of Stockton. We're in Modesto City Airport. So we're going to be doing a flight. We have 2 legs today, so that is what we're going on to this morning. So, of course, for those who don't know about Kings Canyon, this national park is much more rugged and remote compared to that of Sequoia National Park. So, very interesting park in general. Not nearly as visited as Sequoia, but still plenty of interesting stuff to learn about. So, before we get started, I do want to say hello to everyone in chat and the mods. I hope you're all doing well. So here's our map for today. Here's where we're going to fly this morning, of course. Yes, our max altitude will be 15,000 feet for this one. But we're going to start in Modesto. We'll fly from Modesto to Fresno Yosemite Airport. We'll fly to Kilo Foxtrot Alpha Tango at Fresno Yosemite Airport. Then from there, we'll fly into Kings Canyon National Park. We'll fly our way into Deer Creek. Then we'll head our way over to General Grant Grove Village. So you can find the Grant Grove. And of course, we're going to make our way to the General Grant Tree. Then from there, we'll fly over to the highway, of course, to Hume. And we'll make our way through the Kings Canyon Scenic Park Byway. We'll fly over the Scenic Byway as we explore more about it. And we're going to fly all the way down over here into Knapp's Cabin. We'll have a bush landing around this area. Then from there, we'll climb out some of the peaks around Kings Canyon, some of the mountainside scenery, including the John Moore Memorial Shelter. We'll make a landing up here. And then we'll make our way across to this area, and then make our way back to Johnston Field through Rockhaven and Camp Edison. And that would be our final stop. That is what we're going to do today. Pretty simple flight plan. We'll talk plenty about Kings Canyon. Hey, Ebonius player, good to see you, my dude. I hope you're having a great morning. Happy Easter to you and your family. I did get to see some of your co-stream with Boozy Sheep. That was a lot of fun. I'm glad you had a great time. So definitely check out Bonnie's Player, an amazing guy. Love his streams. Been a massive fan of his streams. No matter if he's streaming MSFS or X-Plane, big fan of his. Really enjoy your stuff, my dude. Keep up the good work. So, Kings Canyon, really cool national park. So we're gonna go ahead and explore. Yes, it is pretty important. Easter's also my sister's birthday coming up soon. So, yesterday was my sister's birthday, so that was pretty important for me, for my younger sister. So, we're going to go ahead and get this first part of the flight plan set up. So, we're going to head into Kings Canyon, of course. MOD. So, by the way, guys, this is our last stream before we head on to vacation. I'm going to be heading out next week, of course. So, we'll be heading out on vacation to Southampton. We'll probably be leaving on Wednesday, I believe. So we don't really need to. So we don't really need to fly super high for the first leg. We can just fly 1,500 feet. We don't really need to fly very high for this first leg. Same here, Banyas. It's always good to be here. I appreciate always you being here, of course. Definitely means a lot for sure to have you here in the chat too. So one of the big things I do want to talk about, though, of course, for the flight for my streaming, I'll be heading out of town on Wednesday, I believe, so we can get there. We're going to be then going to spend some time in Southampton, and finally from there, of course, in Southampton. And once we spend a couple days in Southampton, we're going to be going on our cruise from the 11th of April to the 25th of April. So we're going to be gone for 2 weeks in the Mediterranean. We're going to be visiting Cadiz, Barcelona, Toulon, Livorno for Florence and Pisa, Civitavecchia, which is Rome, and then finally Ajaccio in Corsica, which is technically part of France. So 14 days should be pretty exciting. We never cruised into the Mediterranean before, so it should be interesting. I'll definitely give you guys plenty of pictures in the Discord, and I'll let you guys know what we're going to be doing, of course. I'll give you guys plenty of pictures and stuff. So for how the streaming's going to work, we're going to be for our stream schedule. I'll let you guys know this when I return, but I'm going to go ahead and post it after stream about the schedule. But it's going to be 3 days a week, start at 10 a.m. in the morning for all. That way, all my streams now have a consistent schedule. They'll always start at 10 a.m. So that way, it's consistent. The times are consistent, and it's going to be early in the morning, which is going to be good. I'm more of a morning person anyways, so this is actually pretty good for me. Get things done early in the morning and then have the rest of the time to chill or do some stuff. But it's going to be Monday, Wednesdays, and it's going to be Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays, like always. So not going to be that much of a change, just going to be scheduled a little earlier in the morning. But I've already got what I'm going to do when I come back, however. I've already got the stream set up for the next 3 ones we would do coming back. So the game day flight when we return on May 1st, which would be the week I return back home, our game day flight will be the first MLB game of their game day flights. We'll be doing the Cincinnati Reds and the Pittsburgh Pirates on May 1st. So the flight plan would be from Louisville into Pittsburgh. To Pittsburgh Allegheny County Airport. Will be what we're doing. We'll talk about the Reds and Pirates, these two pretty historic rivals for the NL Central. Should be a lot of fun to do, of course, on the Fridays. But that'll be Friday, of course. That'll be the game day flight we're doing. For the Wednesday, I've actually decided for a flight in Switzerland. We'll fly into the lakes, in the Alpine lakes of Switzerland. We'll go from Geneva, we'll go through Bern, Interlaken, go to Lucerne, then make our way up to Zurich, and then we'll fly through Lake Constance, Rheinfelden, Constance, and then make our way to Friedrichshafen. But should be an absolutely gorgeous stream, though. It should be an absolutely gorgeous flight into Switzerland as well. Switzerland is so beautiful. And we'll talk all about Switzerland stuff when we get to the stream. But that's going to be the Wednesday stream, of course, when we get back. And finally, last but not least, is our National Park series. Our next National Park in the series, guys, will be... when we return, will be Isle Royale National Park in northern Michigan, in the Great Lakes. And yes, we will be taking a float plane for this one, just like we did for Everglades. I'm planning on taking the Cessna 172 float plane. and we'll do a landing probably at Siskiwit Lake and do some flying around the island, of course. But I wanted to do something a bit different for that stream, so I'm very excited to cover Isle Royale National Park. So that's going to be the plans for this week. We come back. I'll post a schedule for it when we return. So it'll be a long post, but I'll let you guys know foremost immediately once this is done. So so that's a bit me. That's about what is going on for the next couple days. So let's go ahead and discuss Kings Canyon National Park as we fly our way to the national park location. So let's go ahead and talk about this as we head over to our national park. Kings Canyon National Park here in California. Of course, it's administered by the same group as Sequoia National Park officially. Let me go ahead and put the national park website here for you guys. Let me pin this comment for the so I'll let you guys know about the net if you guys want to learn more about it. But Kings Canyon National Park here in California was established back in 1890 as General Grant National Park. And the park was greatly expanded and renamed on March 4th, 1940 as Kings Canyon National Park. Of course, the park is named after its namesake, Kings Canyon, the rugged glacier-carved valley more than a mile deep. Other natural features include multiple 14,000-foot peaks, high mountain meadows, swift-flowing rivers, and some of the world's largest stands of giant sequoia trees. And it's contiguous with Sequoia National Park, and as a result, it's actually jointly administered by the National Park Service as the Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. So yes, it's administered together with Sequoia, but they're actually different. Now, of course, last time we visited Sequoia first, and that was the first park we visited was Sequoia. But now we're visiting Kings Canyon, which is really right next to it. So one interesting thing about of course, this national park. It's around 461,000 acres as well, and there are two main areas, Grant Grove and Cedar Grove as well, the heart. The park itself was actually created initially to protect a small area of giant sequoias from logging. Although John Moore's public visits have brought public attention to the huge wilderness in the east, it took more than 50 years for the rest of Kings Canyon to be designated as a national park. And a lot of it was pressured by environmental groups, park visitors, and local politicians. Of course, visitation did rise post-World War II, and there was debate whether the park should be a tourist resort or more retain of its natural environment for simpler recreation. And ultimately, it was decided the latter was picked, and the park today only has limited service and lodgings despite its size. Due to this and the lack of road access to the park, Kings Canyon remains the least visited of the major Sierra parks, with just under 700,000 visitors in 2017. And that's compared to at least the 1.3 million visitors at Sequoia and the colossal 4 million at Yosemite. That being said, of course, Kings Canyon has its advantages not being visited nearly as much. You don't have to worry about the crowds. You don't have to worry about the crowds as much in this park. And most importantly, you have some absolutely wonderful scenery here at Kings Canyon. Very underrated park. I know it doesn't get the attention of some of the other ones, but trust me, it's a very interesting park in its own ways. So in terms of geography, of course, Kings Canyon National Park, located in the western slope of the Sierra Nevada to the east of the San Joaquin Valley, is divided into two main sections. You have the smaller and older western section centers around Grant Grove, home to many of the sequoias here in the park, and where you have most of the business facility. And the larger eastern section, which accounts for the park's majority of the area, is almost entirely wilderness and contains the deep canyons of the middle and south forks of the Kings River. Cedar Grove, located at the bottom of Kings Canyon, is the only part of the park's vast eastern portion accessible by road. Although most of the park is forested, much of the eastern section consists of alpine regions above the tree line. Of course, the wilderness of the park encompasses over 768,000 acres of the Kings Canyon and Sequoia National Parks, or nearly 9% of their combined area is wilderness. Which is pretty cool, though. A lot of this is wilderness, of course. In terms of the mountains and valleys, Kings Canyon is characterized by some of the steepest vertical relief in North America, with numerous peaks over 14,000 feet on the Sierra Crest in the eastern border of the park, and it falls to around 4,500 feet at the floor of Cedar Grove. The Sierra Crest forms from Mount Goth from the north down to Junction Peak at the boundary of Sequoia National Park. But all these passes are above 11,000 feet, and most of the mountains and canyons were formed by igneous rocks, granite, diorite, and monzonite, at least 100 million years ago. However, the Sierra is a pretty young mountain range, which was not formed no more than 10 million years ago. And of course, a lot of the mountains and valleys were shaped by glaciers, of course. That happened during the last 2.5 million years during the successive ice ages. And many of them have, and their glaciations formed a lot of the valley floors and the granite cliffs, similar to that of the more famous Yosemite Valley in the north. But it's a really, really cool area, of course. And of course, there's also a majority of rivers formed here at the park. Mainly the South Fork Kings River is probably the most notable river that drains much of the southern half of the park. So, but pretty cool stuff here at Sequoia. Really neat national park in terms of geography, at least. Mrs. Mercy Castle Airport to our left. So here's that airport to our left. We're about to reach Merced. So really cool stuff though about Kings Canyon. Really neat national park, of course. So there's a couple things I do want to go over before we talk back up to our national park. I want to recap some of the stuff that happened yesterday, of course. If you guys recall, our game day flight happened yesterday. We were talking about RC Lawns in Lille, here in France, of Ligue 1. And it turned out it wasn't even close because Lille absolutely dismantled RC Lawns in that game. It was not even fair. It was not even fair. RC Lille absolutely dismantled Lawns 3-0. All of them pretty much absolutely dealing a massive blow to Lawns' title run hopes against PSG. Combine that with PSG's earlier win against Lawns, PSG are now 4 points ahead of Lawns. The win also puts Lille at third right now, and depending on the results of today's matches with Lyon and Marseille, Lille could actually remain third, and that would be huge for Lille's Champions League hopes as well. So a lot of stuff can actually happen here for the Champions League, of course. Also, another bit of news, of course, Louisville City did lose its first game earlier yesterday as well. First loss for Louisville City in 27 games dating back to last year, back to 2 years ago. Yeah, it was going to happen. Louisville City was going to lose some point. It just happened here today against Charleston. Hey, Planet Neutral, good to see you, my dude. I hope you're doing well. I hope your Sunday's going well. Happy Easter to you and your family. I hope you had a good Easter. So definitely shout out to Planet Neutral, great dude in the channel, excellent friend. So we are going to cover Kings Canyon National Park today. We're visiting Kings Canyon. Yeah, it's a very underrated national park, which is a real shame because the scenery in Kings Canyon is absolutely incredible. It's less visited, and it's got the beauty of Yosemite and Sequoia, but without all the visitors. Which makes Kings Canyon a really neat park, in general. So really, really cool stuff, of course, about Kings Canyon. Really neat park. More people should visit it, of course. Really neat stuff, of course. And of course, Kings Canyon's got tons of beautiful mountains to pick from. So, yeah, it's pretty big stuff, of course. Definitely check out Planet Neutral. Great local streamer from around my local area. Love his stuff. Been a big fan of his for years. So, this will be the last stream before I head out. Keep Planet Neutral. I'm going to be heading to Europe again. So, it's definitely going to be pretty big one, though, going back to Europe again. Also, one last sports thing before we return back to our National Park series. We had the Final Four. The National Championship game is set for tomorrow on Monday in Men's March Madness, of course. And it's going to be between UConn and Michigan for the national title, which is going to be pretty crazy to think about. For UConn, of course, they could be looking for their third national title in 4 years, which is actually pretty crazy to think UConn can now get back to a national title for the third time in 4 years. Looking for the third title in 4 years, though, for UConn. They previously won 2 more national titles in 2023 and 2024. Could look for the third, like I said, third national title in 4 years would be a dynasty for UConn's men's basketball. Michigan, however, is looking for its first national title since 1989. Was their last national title. They previously been runners-up, most recently in 2018. But Michigan's looking for their second ever national title in basketball. So should be interesting, though, for sure. For Wolverines, of course. So let's get back to our slideshow for a bit. So in terms of plants and wildlife you can find here at Kings Canyon National Park, of course, there's over 1,200 species of plants in both Kings Canyon and Sequoia National Parks, representing 20% of all plant species here in California. Although its sister park, in the South Sequoia, is better known for its giant sequoias. However, Kings Canyon also has its own large stands, including the famous General Grant, the second largest tree on Earth, in the middle of General Grant Grove. And don't worry, I got a slide for him about General Grove. But in fact, you also have Redwood Mountain Grove, which is a short distance further south, is the largest surviving one of these groves in the world. And it features the tallest sequoia in the world at known at 311 feet. The forests provide a lot of habitat for many mammal species such as mule deer, Savannah and Sierra Nevada bighorn sheep, mountain lions, and black bears, as well as a diversity of bird and reptile species. And the park has been involved in restoring the bighorn population. There used to be grizzly bears in the park, however, they were hunted extinction in the early 1900s. Now, birds such as gray-crowned rosy finches and American pipits are and sensitive amphibian species feed on the insects near alpine lakes and wilderness. While larger areas such as bears may venture into the alpine zone in search of food. Of course, one interesting thing about sequoia, of course, is definitely all the different plants and animal species. And yes, California used to have its own grizzly bear species. In fact, that was the bear featured on the flag of California, despite the fact it doesn't even exist. So, pretty interesting stuff, though, about the wild animals, of course. So, about the human history of the national park and some of the bits of human history. The human history of this national park dates back to the indigenous peoples, and they've been around this area for 6,000, 7,000 years, and it was mainly visited the region. The Owens Valley Paiutes visited the region from their homeland east of the Sierra Nevada around Mono Lake. And they mainly used acorns for food as well as deer and other small animals, and they created tree routes connecting Owens Valley with the Central Valley west of the Sierra Nevada. You also have the Yokuts who lived in the Central Valley and ventured into the mountains during the summer to collect plants, hunt game, and trade. Due to the inhospitable winter climate, they did not establish permanent villages in the high country. And prior to European contact, they were around 15,000 to 20,000 people. In the Monos, around 6,000, of course. Around the 1500s AD, some of the eastern Mono have migrated across the Sierra Nevada into the Central Valley, where they created settlements adjoining Yokuts territory in the Sierra foothills. And they became known as the Monaches, or Western Mono tribe. And they were eventually divided into as many as 6 different bands, distinct bands, one of which lived near Grand Grove. Of course, when America expanded in the 19th century, the native population suffered greatly as smallpox epidemic killed off most of the Monache in 1862, and there are only very few remaining in the area today. So, not really much about what happened with the indigenous people. I know there's still find some artifacts, of course, of when they were once there. So, but yeah, pretty tragic fate for the natives, of course. That's sadly, a common outcome for much of American history. Then, of course, for European history and exploration, the first European explorations bypassed was Kings Canyon, was the Spanish expedition in California, largely bypassed what is now Kings Canyon National Park. In 1805, of course, Gabriel Moraga led the expedition through the Central Valley and crossed what is now the Kings River, bestowing the name Rio de los Santos Reyes, River of the Holy Kings, on the stream. Fur trappers also visited this area in the 1820s, but most likely did not venture into the high country since beaver were only present in lower elevations. And of course, it was followed by prospectors during the California Gold Rush, which began in 1848, but again, not much gold nor other minerals were discovered in the area. But one notable disillusioned gold miner, Hale Tharp, is credited with discovery of giant forests in Sequoia Park, which led to further exploration and discovery of the other Sequoia forests in the area. During the 1880s, a road was built into Grant Grove, and many of the sequoias were logged, but several of the first sawmills opened in 1862, and logging operations expanded north and almost entirely levered Converse Basin, then one of the largest sequoia groves in the world at the time. though the tallest tree, Bull Tree, was actually spared. And of course, the General Grant tree, which we will talk about later, was discovered also in 1862 by Joseph H. Thomas. During the 1870s, government survey disclosed the remarkable quality of the General Grant Grove. In Israel, Galen was persuaded to give up his claim so the area could be preserved. However, it did not entirely stop logging in the area. As well. Of course, the first non-native people to venture what is today the National Backcountry was John Fremont's party in 1844. And he became the first people to adventure who attempted to cross the Sierra Nevada by the way of Kings River, but it was impeded by a snowstorm. But of course, there was also a scientific expedition in this area in 1864, conducted by the Geological Survey of California, and after many attempts to fail to climb Mount Whitney, they were reported to ascend to Kings Canyon via Native American paths. And they remarked its resemblance to the Yosemite and impressed by its enormous cliffs. But of course, the park itself didn't lead to creation until 1873, when John Moore visited in 1873, where it became public attention, and he was delighted about the canyon's similarity to Yosemite, as it reinforced his theory that the valleys were carved by massive glaciers. And this competed with Josiah and Whitney's accepted theory that they were formed by earthquakes. But of course, eventually, in 1880, logging claims in Grant area was suspended by the federal government, and eventually in 1890, they proposed the creation of Yosemite National Park. Of course, some political intrigue happened, led to its substitution, which also included provisions for General Grant National Park and expansion of Sequoia, and eventually was signed into law in 1890 to establish General Grant National Park, which is the U.S.'s fourth national park in existence. Of course, for many years, the primary way to reach tourists in this area, of course, was the Stevens Grade, a rough wagon road over which a stagecoach going to Visala. However, the future of the park's much larger east section remained in doubt for almost 50 years, as it was largely inaccessible and unknown to tourists and required several days' journey on horseback. But eventually, it happened in 1940 as well. Of course, Los Angeles tried to use the secure Kings River in order to turn into a political pressure for water supply. As the Kings River was targeted for power outage and power for Los Angeles, who wanted to build hydroelectric dams in Kings Canyon. However, local opposition prevented Los Angeles from using Kings River into political pressure, and eventually the U.S. expanded this area, and the eastern half of the park became part of Kings Canyon National Park in 1940 by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. So that leads into Kings Canyon, of course. Now, of course, the new Kings Canyon did struggle to manage the huge park, which was more than 700 times the size of the original unit of Grants Grove. In the early years, staff and expertise were often loaned from Sequoia National Park. Though after World War II, the arrangement was preserved, and the two parks are still managed as one. Post-war visitation dropped enormously to around from 82,000 in 1945 to 450,000 in 1951. And eventually, they continued to develop this park even more. Of course, in 1966 and 1971, the Park Service proposed, and it ended up passing that to designate most of the park as wilderness, which was controversial at the time, considering a lot of people wanted to visit this area, of course. So that concludes a bit about the human history of Sequoia National Park, and that pretty much wraps up our human history of the park. So, as we're flying our way into Sequoia, we can see the backdrop of the Sierra Nevadas in the distance. Is the Sierra Nevadas. pressing our way into the difference. So we're getting closer to our first stop of the day. So we're getting very much closer to our first stop. So definitely a lot of really cool stuff here to visit, of course. So as we get ready to do this, of course, let me check something. So we'll be getting ready near to Fresno. So our first stop is going to be in Fresno, California, at Fresno Yosemite. So Fresno is going to be our first stop. Fresno, California is actually California's largest city in the Central Valley region, and it's California's fifth most populous city with around 542,000. It's actually the most populous inland city in the state, actually. Famous for named after its abundant ash trees near the San Joaquin River, Fresno was founded in 1872 as a railway station for the Central Pacific Railroad. But it's grown a lot ever since, thanks to its proximity, thanks to the fact that its location made it a central hub for the entire Central Valley. And it's also the third largest majority Hispanic city in the United States, with 50% of it being Hispanic in 2020. Fresno, of course, is rich. Fresno is mainly tied a lot to agriculture. Agriculture is a huge part of the Central Valley. It's one of the world's most productive agriculture regions. More than 230 crops are grown there, and less than 1% of total farmland. As a result. But there's tons of things to do in Fresno. Sports are very popular, especially college sports. Fresno State football is a big deal in terms of the biggest event in sport in the city. And also minor league sports are a big deal here too. Fresno's a pretty cool city. Really neat place to check things out, of course. So we'll be arriving at Yosemite, Fresno, of course. And of course, Fresno's very close to the 3 national parks in the Sierra Nevada: Yosemite, Kings Canyon, and Sequoia. So Fresno's a very popular gateway to all 3 of those national parks. Hey, it's good to see you, Shaq. I hope you're doing well. My dude, check out his channel, of course. Here's a shot for him and his channel. I hope you're doing well. We're going to head to Kings Canyon National Park today as we explore Kings Canyon. So just a 2-leg stream here today. So we're gonna make our way over to King. Better yesterday, but yep, all good. You done all your packing yet? I got my clothes packed and stuff. I'm still waiting to grab my my iPad, my tablet, and I also need to grab my sleeping machine. But we don't go until Wednesday, I believe. But yeah, we got nearly most of the things packed. Like all the clothes and stuff. We took all our clothes and we took all that sort of stuff. We're getting ready to go. So, yeah, we nearly got everything ready to get going. So, we got Yosemite, Fresno, Yosemite airports in our horizon. It's mainly used for West Coast flights, of course. It also has international flights to Guadalajara, Leon, and Morelia, Mexico, as its international flights. So. I may even see the ship going past if I look out and see the right time. Anyway, let's get you on the tour with the tour. Absolutely right, Shaq. we'll be moving it into this direction. So we're going to make a landing here, here in this airport. So we'll stop right here for just a little bit as we prepare for the next leg, of course. Just take a little bit of a break. If anyone wants to join alongside us, we're on the Southeast Asian server. I forgot to update my stream bot, chat bot this morning. Oh, let me go ahead and... So that is what's going on here this morning. So there you go. So we'll... So we're going to go ahead and get ready for the second last leg of the flight. So let's go ahead and get moving, of course. Our next leg is going to be 3,500 feet. And we're going to go ahead and cover, and then we're going to go ahead 64-degree heading. And we're going to head our way over to the national park. So, here's a bit more information. Oh, nice. I watched this week as I'm installing a E3. Ooh, reinstalling. Oh, nice. The E380. Ooh, that's going to be a fun aircraft. Absolutely huge. If you guys don't know about E380, how big an E380 is, it's huge, even compared to E747, funnily enough. I mean, if you want to put a comparison, it's about 44 feet in wingspan. It is shorter though by 12 feet, but it's 16 feet higher in height. It's 30% heavier than a 747, and it can carry up to over 500 passengers in a 3-class setup. It's absolutely insane how big an A380 is. It's huge. So in terms of recreation at the park, the national park has quite a bit of recreation. General Grant Grove, the only vehicular entrance to the park, is 60 miles east of Fresno. And the roads mainly converge into Grant Grove. where the Highway I-80 continues for another 35 miles as well. And the National Park maintains visitor center in Cedar Grove and Grant Grove. And Grant Grove is the most developed area of the park, including the 36-room John Muir Lodge, as well as visitor cabins, restaurant, and general store. Due to limited road access, Kings Canyon receives many fewer visitors than other national parks in just Sequoia and Yosemite. But on the other hand, with less people, there's less crowds. And there, of course, there are 3 major campgrounds in the park in Grant Grove: Azalea, Crystal Springs, and Sunset, with over 319 different campsites and campgrounds in total. And they operate at a first-come, first-served basis. Cedar Grove has 314 sites in Sentinel, Sheep Creek, and Moraine campgrounds, which also come first-served areas of the park. And all campgrounds have flush toilets and showers, although water use may be restricted depending on the season. Of course, there's a couple of D-hikes throughout the park, and they're accessible by road. In Grant Grove, there's about 1 mile trailheads that lead into the original Grant Tree, and several longer trails reach other points of interest like Redwood Mountain, the large Sequoia Grove. Cedar Grove has several easy hikes, including the Boardwalk Path through Zumwalt Meadow, providing broad views of the Kings Canyon, and more. There's also a number of historical sites that are accessible by walking, of course. However, the real thing that really sets Kings Canyon apart is the backcountry trail. Now, this is where this park shines, is backcountry. Backpacking is probably the only major way you see the majority of the park. Unlike day hikers, overnight backpackers must obtain a wilderness permit from a ranger station or visitor center. During peak tourist season, a quota applies for wilderness permits, in which 75% are assigned for prior reservation, with the remainder for walk-ins. Outside of the quota period, permits are still required, although the limit does not apply. Although backpackers account for a relatively small percentage of total visitors, some of the backcountry trails are still heavily used. During the popular backcountry camps, stays can be limited to 1 or 2 nights. During the summer, the Park Ranger Service staffs backcountry ranger stations in McClure Meadow, LeConte Meadow, Ray Lakes, Charlotte Lake, and Roaring River. And of course, for many of the really important stuff, backpacking is really cool, and it lets you see the majority of the park. The large exposed granite cliffs in Kings Canyon provide opportunities for rock climbing. However, many such features require long or circuitous hikes to reach their bases, which deters many climbers. Canyoning, bouldering, bushwhacking, and rappelling are often necessary to explore parts of the backcountry without developed trails. And of course, in terms of water sports, mainly fly fishing, and Cedar Grove has fly fishing. And a California state fishing license is required for visitors for fishing. So that covers a bit about the recreation at the park and what kind of recreation opportunities are available at the park. As you can tell, there are quite a few of them here at the park for recreation opportunities. So there's quite a few really notable trails at the park. Let's look at all trails. So if we look at our All Trails website, we can look at some of the trails at the park. Some of the most notable top trails in the park: General Grant Trail, Mist Falls, the Zumwalt Meadow, and then we have the Kearsarge Pass Trail. Of course, there's a lot of strenuous trails too, but these are some of the most popular ones here at the park. These are some of the most popular ones in the park. Of course, General Grant Trail is the most popular trail in the park, and basically it's a 1.6 mile loop, and you can see all the different sequoias. So yeah, you can see all these different sequoias in the park. So many really cool ones here. all the different trees, all the different sequoias. Got some Ella Falls. Take trails. You get some really cool views at Kings Canyon. Yeah, look at these trees. It's absolutely huge. But yeah, you can see the sequoias. Here's Miss Falls, which is a more strenuous route, but your reward is the absolute beautiful valley down below. Absolutely incredible valleys. I mean, just look at the state of this. This is part of Kings Canyon. Look at the valley, man. It's just so absolutely incredible though. Minimus Falls, absolutely gorgeous. With some of the really cool peaks and stuff. Zumwalt Meadow, often a great way to see the meadow and stuff. Um, there will be bush lighting opportunities here. And finally, Kearsage Pass Trail, which is more strenuous, but this is some of the views you get out of this trail. And this will let you get into the more of the backcountry area of the park. And that's where Keys Canyon really shines, is if you're in the backcountry. You have access to some absolutely incredible trails. So the final two slides we'll be covering today, of course, our first waypoint will get us into General Grant Tree. This tree is the largest giant sequoia in the Grant Grove section of Kings Canyon National Park, as well as the second largest sequoia tree in the world, after the General Sherman tree in nearby Sequoia National Park. Once thought to be over 2,000 years old, recent estimates suggested that it's actually a bit younger at 1,650 years old. The tree also features the third largest footprint of any living giant sequoia, measuring around 107 feet in circumference at ground level. And of course, the namesake is Ulysses S. Grant, U.S. Army General and 18th President of the United States. Calvin Coolidge once proclaimed it as the nation's Christmas tree in April 28, 1926. Due to the large part of its large base, it was thought to be the largest tree in the world. And Dwight D. Eisenhower even declared the tree a national shrine on March 29, 1956, as a memorial to those who died in war, making it the only living object to be declared so. And we're going to climb a bit. So, really cool stuff, really cool tree. So, yeah, this tree is pretty tall. It's 267 feet tall, 107 feet circumference. Its estimated bole volume, its trunk volume, is around 46,608 cubic feet. And these giant sequoias are really cool. The wood is mainly fibers and brittle. Trees will often shatter after they fell, and as a result, it is unsuitable for construction, and it's mainly used for fence posts or matchsticks, is what these trees were mainly used for, mainly the uses of their wood. It's also high resistant to decay, too. So, pretty cool stuff. These sequoias are really neat trees. Like I said, lots to cover here. And our last slide is the General's Highway, which connects State Route 180 and State Route 193 through Sequoia National Park, Sequoia National Forest, Giant Sequoia National Monument, and Kings Canyon National Park. And as the road goes through numerous parks, national parks, and monuments, it's primarily maintained by the federal government. The highway is notoriously steep, winding, especially and difficult to drive, especially at its southern section from Hospital Rock to Giant Forest within Sequoia National Park. This section also consists of numerous switchbacks and has a speed limit of 10 miles an hour. And regulations restrict the length of vehicles as they can't be more than 40 feet, although vehicles longer than 22 feet are not recommended on the road. Really cool stuff. Really neat highway, of course, but it's a really nice and scenic drive. You get to see some of the really cool scenery here in this area. So that's it, everyone. That's about our national parks. The rest of the way, we'll just mainly be covering the rest of the park as we fly into it. So let's take a look outside for our views here this morning. Of course, absolutely gorgeous views this morning. Looks absolutely gorgeous today. Gorgeous view of the reservoir. Now we're going to head our way into Grant Grove. We'll find we're going to head our way to the General Grant Tree, which shouldn't be that far. Nice thing about the Savage Norton is that it's really easy to get up and down through all this area, and it has really good short takeoff landing performance. So. So, beautiful scenery here. And yes, we can see some of the sequoias here. So we'll fly over the General Grant Tree and fly over the village, of course. Then, of course, we'll fly through the scenic park and we'll fly through much of Route 180. So we'll go over this area pretty soon. So General Grant's Grove should be ahead of us nearby. So yeah, we're going to be climbing even further. For the canyon, though, we're going to remain at 8,000 feet as we fly through much of this canyon, of course. And then we'll fly through this canyon area, of course. We will make a bush landing at in Knapp's Cavern, of course. We'll make a bush landing right near Knapp's Cavern, of course. We'll land near the canyon, of course, the Kings Canyon area. So we'll be making through General Grant's Grove very soon. Yeah, look at all these sequoias all over this area, man. This is really cool. So here we go, guys. We're entering the General Grant Grove, so weird, but absolutely stunning scenery this morning, of course, blessed with incredible landscapes. So absolutely stunning scenery here as we arrive to General Grant. So the General Grant tree is down below us. So I think that's the General Grant tree right here. We'll just take a brief fly a little lower. So yeah, there's the General Grant tree right. There's the Grant Grove right here. So there is Grant Grove where we're flying over right now. Is Grant Grove. So that's where the General Grant and many other sequoias like it actually are at. Yeah, I had to put an active pause, but I'm going to show you where that is the Grant tree. Of course, it's all covered in sin. There's no particular landmark. But yeah, these are all the sequoias. So. Yeah. Absolutely insane scenery. So now we're going to drive into Kings Canyon itself, the big valley. We're going to make a bush lane here at Knapp's cabin. So we'll make a landing around this area here. Just going to point to where I think this. But yeah, some absolutely incredible views of Kings Canyon. This is very, very exciting. Very, very exciting day, everyone. So looking forward to this, obviously. So we're going to actually drop altitude to 6,500 feet. And we'll drop down. So we enter into the valley floor of Kings Canyon. So should be interesting. So here we go. Drop down. And the State Route 180. So we go to the scenic byway. Yeah, this is the scenic byway that connects pretty much Kings Canyon. So whoa, careful. Nope. Oh crap. Yeah, this is the King Canyon byway. Look at this. Woo-hoo. Holy heck. Oh, that is a gorgeous view. Oh, that's a gorgeous view. Oh, careful. No, I gotta push up. Oh man, what an absolutely gorgeous view. Turn off the autopilot. I'm gonna fly through this area. What an absolutely epic view, man. Look at the state of that. Oh man, that's gorgeous. Oh Lord. That is just crazy scenery. But yeah, we'll be landing soon in this area, of course. But this scenery is just remarkable. Just absolutely incredible, man. What you guys look at the state of, as Tuto Murphy would say, look at the state of that. And I don't think he would be even kidding. This is just absolutely incredible. So we're about to arrive into Cedar Grove. This is the other major developed area at the park, is Cedar Grove. Um, yeah, yeah, this is an absolute incredible drive. That's what we're doing in the actual park. Oh, King Canyon. Look at the landscape. Absolutely incredible. So, we'll be... So, we'll make our landing here at Knapp's Cabin, near the Roaring River. So we'll make our landing here very soon. We'll find. We'll see if we can get a place to land. There's enough of an open spot to land. But man, what an absolutely gorgeous park. Again, it has that's not a lot of people visit here because a lot of it isn't very well developed. But if you ever get the chance to explore this park, you realize how special this place is. I think there's a little bit of open grass we can land. So there is a little open space there. Normal Rolls planes can't do this, but this is a slow plane. There's a little space right here we can land. Not the smoothest landing, but not smooth landing, but I'll take it. So we'll park right here. We'll park right here for just a second. Shift C. So this is what it looks like from Keys came from below. Oh, would you look at that? Look at that for a view. Now that is pretty cool. Not gonna lie. Absolutely stunning piece of view. So, pretty impressive. That should be a screenshot. Absolutely incredible. Views from this canyon are just absolutely gorgeous. So we're going to go ahead and get back into the plane. And we're going to go ahead and head off. And we're going to start climbing. We're going to go up to around to our next landing spot. We're going to climb up to 13,500 feet. So we're going to go 13,500 feet. So we're going to go ahead and repeat. So we're going to go 13,000 feet. Yep, and we're going to be going. So we're going to continue climbing for the next couple of miles, of course. So we're going to continue climbing. Even. Yeah, what an absolutely stunning scenery this morning. This place has really exceeded my expectations. Yeah, the giant redwoods and sequoias are absolutely. These are sequoias and redwoods. The redwoods technically actually grow more northwest of California. We'll visit Redwood National Park in the series in the future, when that comes around. So down below us is the Zumwalt Meadow. So we'll turn right very, very soon. So we'll turn right. Yeah, this is very impressive. Kings Canyon, man. You know what? I might actually like this park more than Sequoia, and that's saying something because Sequoia was absolutely gorgeous when we visited the park. When we visited Sequoia back in episode 3 of the series, one of the first episodes of the series. But this might actually be better. Just pretty crazy to think about it. But the scenery here in Keys Canyon might actually be better, which is pretty crazy to think about. So we're going to continue to climb up even further. So we're going to continue much higher up through the peaks. Hey, Shields Racing, good to see you. Can you really take this thing off like at 35 knots? Yes. Yes, you can. This is a dedicated STOL aircraft. Yes, you certainly can. After all, this is dedicatedly purpose-made for being a STOL aircraft. The real-life Norden. Really neat aircraft. Its performance is incredible. It is a dedicated STOL aircraft. Like its stall speed with full flaps is 34 miles an hour. And it can take off at 224 feet at max takeoff. So if you have a single pilot, less than 100 feet, it is a STOL aircraft. It's made to do that. This aircraft is why I take it for the National Park adventures and stuff. That's why it's the main aircraft for all the bush stuff I do, because it has incredible takeoff performance. I don't need a big runway with this thing. I can take off from anywhere I want. From just about anywhere I want. It's an absolutely incredible plane. Definitely my favorite MSFS 2024 base sim plane. In the standard edition non-third-party planes, this is probably the best one to get. It makes Premium Deluxe well worth it just because of this aircraft alone. Oh man. Wow, that is an impressive screenshot. Oh man, I'm running out of great places to screenshot in my Discord. And speaking of my Discord, if you guys want to check out my Discord, of course, you are more than welcome to check out my Discord. If you want to catch along with my community streams and community content, let me give you the Discord link. Here it is. I've seen Coastal Redwoods, but never got a chance to these. Oh, really, Bishop? Oh, that's cool. Didn't know you went in that region in real life. We're going to go ahead and turn left. But man, this is just... But man, this is just breathtaking. Holy heck, Kings Canyon. You might actually be just as pretty as Yosemite. And I'm not kidding. This park might just be just as pretty as Yosemite. Oh, Kings Canyon. What an underrated national park. Yeah, and the sad thing is, most people will never get to see this part of the national park because it's a wilderness. Maybe I should raise to 14,000. So, yeah, you drove in most of the U.S. apart from the Northeast. Now, if you ever get to the Northeast Shack, in North Mid United States, so in the Northeast, if you want to go to some really cool area in the Northeast, there's some really good areas in New England to visit. Of course, there's tons of scenery in the Northeast. Vermont and New Hampshire has some really neat places naturally. Vermont's got the different Green Mountains that run throughout the entire state. Is the Green Mountains. Those are really pretty in Vermont, and we got a chance to do one of those in our USA series we did last year. Our 50 states, we got to visit the natural landscapes of Vermont, New Hampshire, which were absolutely gorgeous. New Hampshire, of course, has the different peaks around this area, especially Mount Washington, which is extremely windy. You would never think Mount Washington is much. You would think, oh, big deal, it's just some peak in the Northeast. Mount Washington is super windy. Um, at one point, it reached a wind speed of 231 miles an hour at one point. But Mount Washington's a really interesting point. It's like the tallest peak in the Northeast United States, and of course, Maine. You have the beautiful coast of Maine. The Maine coast is absolutely gorgeous, and of course, you can't forget the crown jewel of the Northeast U.S., Acadia National Park, which I got to visit in real life and flew over in the sim. Amazing place to visit. Acadia is absolutely gorgeous. Oh, really? You used to live at the base of the White Mountains in New Hampshire. Oh, cool. I was wondering. Yeah, the White Mountains are pretty cool. We got to fly over them in the sim. Really neat areas, of course. Really neat areas. Like I said, I got a chance to fly over in the sim. I want to visit in real life, and Acadia is absolutely wonderful. It's a great park. Got something for a lot of different people. Amazing hiking park, amazing trails. You can take the boat around the coast. Cadillac Mountain's got some incredible views. Great park. Of course, the North Mid United States, which would be like Minnesota, north in the Dakotas. I get it. A lot of people don't really visit that region much. But if you ever do get a chance to visit these regions, I would like to visit. In North Dakota, there's Theodore Roosevelt National Park, a pretty underrated national park. We'll be covering in the series later on, along with Badlands National Park in South Dakota. Two really interesting parks. Theodore Roosevelt National Park is actually named after our president, Theodore Roosevelt, and it's because he used to live in this area for a bit, and that's what the park was named after. A lot of Badlands stuff in North Dakota. And then, of course, South Dakota has both Wind Cave, which is one of the nation's longest caves, and, of course, Badlands National Park, which is really cool in its own area, too. And we'll visit both of those parks later in the series, of course. How much later? Let's see. It's in part 4 of the series. Part 4. Wind Cave is a park we actually already visited before in the series. It's actually one of the first parks we visited in this series. So we're going to continue on this way for a bit longer, of course. Some really neat mountain ranges, of course, tons of peaks. So, how much you hand fly or operating the computer? I do hand fly quite a bit. There will be some national park stuff I can do hand flying. There are times I didn't hand flying, but I mainly do the autopilot stuff for a lot of it. I do sometimes do hand flying. I might do it in the future. But for the thing I do here for the national park, the tours and stuff, it would be easier for me to do the autopilot so I can present things a little easier and all that. But I'm more than capable of doing hand flying. Yeah, the autopilot looks pretty robust for a plane like this. Yeah, it's pretty robust for a plane like this. But I can do hand flying too. And in fact, one of my series I did, which was the Ju-52 flights, was pretty much hand flown. I pretty much hand flown a lot of that for the Ju-52 series. I actually was hand flying that. The Ju-52 was incredibly stable, but I did it hand flying. I've done several of the 52 states flights with hand flying before. It's just for this, the autopilot makes things significantly easier And plus, for some reason, the autopilot doesn't automatically set the trim, so I'm doing that. But I do make sure hand flying. It's just for the way I present these streams, it makes it easier with autopilot, for me at least. But that's a good question, though, Shield Racing. Really cool, though. But yeah, this plane is really neat up. Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate it. So our next bushland site is the John Moore Memorial Shelter. Now, of course, this shelter is actually here for people who hike the Pacific Crest National Scenic Trail. This trail, by the way, the Pacific Crest Trail, goes around 2,600 miles across from Mexico to British Columbia. But basically goes through, pretty much goes through the forest around Southern California, Mount Angeles, that enters into the Moore Valley, goes through several of the Sierra, it goes through 3 of the Sierra Nevada National Parks, around Lake Tahoe, goes into Lhasa National Park, makes its way through into Oregon, going through Crater Lake, Klamath Falls, the Three Sisters, around Mount Hood, through Mount Rainier National Park, and the North Cascades National Park. But it goes through tons of national parks and some really interesting scenery, though. It's an absolute gorgeous trail, though, but it's very strenuous. It's a very strenuous hiker. It's a very strenuous hike, though, because the route goes through a lot of wilderness. And honestly, also, too, is the fact there's some things you're going to have to worry about. Animals, for one thing, is pretty worried about. Animals are something to worry about. You also worry about avalanches, forest fires, black bears, venomous snakes, mountain lions, lightning, dehydration, of course, is a big one. But there's a lot of stuff you have to be careful on those trails. You need to be prepared to be worried about. But I mean, there's tons of variety. Of course, it's one of the many scenic trails of the park. It's one of our national scenic trails in the country. Of course, the most famous scenic trail is the original trail, the Appalachian Trail. But there's plenty of other national scenic trails. The other of the big 3 of the scenic trails is actually the Continental Divide Trail, which goes through from New Mexico over to Montana. So pretty cool stuff. Got these interesting trails, of course. It goes through multiple national parks. But I definitely appreciate the kind word, Shields. So we're going to land up here. So, of course, this isn't going to be easy since a lot of it is hiking. So I think it's behind this peak. We'll find the scene. But right now it's covered in snow. We have 13,000 feet above sea level. The good thing is we're in this aircraft, which is more than capable for a bush landing. So we're just going to do it to kill off some speed. So there's our shoulder down below. So we're going to be this. We're mainly going to do it because Yes, because we can do it in this aircraft. We can do it to bleed off speed. And we're down. Not the smoothest landing, but she's down. Like I said, not the. Yeah. So this is what it looks like to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, just for a little bit for all you guys who don't know about this trail. But yeah, this is what it looks like if you're in the Pacific Crest Trail. Is you have all this. You're going through the mountains, of course, 13,000 feet above sea level, 12,000, 13,000 feet above sea level. Can you imagine the amount of strenuous hikes you have to do? But really cool, though. Yeah, really cool place to visit, of course. And this shelter, by the way, was actually built by the Sierra Club in 1930 as an emergency shelter. So, pretty cool stuff. So we're going to go ahead and get back to our plane, of course. We're going to enter for 14 degrees. And we'll climb 14 degrees. And 15,000 feet. Now, of course, at this high altitude, most planes will struggle taking off from here. But the thing is, the Savage Norton is not one of those planes. Savage Norton is not one of those planes. It does not struggle to take off at these high altitudes. And we're going to climb significantly. We're going to climb up to 1,500 feet above sea level. IAS, and we're going to fly. Look at that. This plane is absolute rock. And definitely do it in the summer. Yeah, definitely do it in the summer, of course. In the summer, this looks significantly improved. And speaking of which, what does it look like in the summer? So let's move to June. So this is what the pass would look like in the summertime. As you all can see, not really much snow cover the mountains anymore. Just some remnants of the glacial peaks. So that's what it looks like in the summer. I'm still keeping it April since I'm going to keep it consistent of the days I'm going to visit. So we're going to fly from here. But yeah, 15,000 feet is actually the max altitude for this thing in real life. So we're about to head to the max. So we're going to turn left into D. So really cool stuff. We're going to be heading down this way. So once we head through here, we're going to head into this direction. Of course, once we do that, we're going to drop down. We're going to drop down a little bit once we reach our next waypoint. We're going to hit our way over. We're actually going to drop in altitude to 14,000. Don't really. Turns out we don't even need the 15,000 feet. We're going to drop slowly by 500 feet a minute. So we drop our way down over to our next waypoint. Once we get through Pavilion Dome, so we get through our waypoints. Of this. So, really cool stuff. So there's Florence Lake. Down below to our ahead of us is Florence Lake. And mainly this scenic reservoir here provides access for a lot of John Muir wilderness for hikers, as well as for fishing for trout and even seasonal ferry service. Really pretty lake though. We're going to approach it pretty soon, but well, it's about 12 miles ahead of us, so it'll be a couple more. We'll see. There's Florence Lake. Just stretching. Mm. So now we can drop down officially to 12,000 feet. So we can drop down again. And we can finally So we can drop down once again. So we'll make her here. Now to our left is some pretty interesting mountains. There's Ward Mountain and Mount Shin. That's to our left. And ahead of us is Florence Lake, one of the scenic reservoirs here at the park. So we'll take a picture here. Let's see how many images I got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Eight images so far. So I'll post these in my Discord if you guys want to check them out all out. Some really cool people. I hope you all enjoy this stream as much as I do. This park has been absolutely stunning. I was not expecting it to be this nice looking here in the sim, but looks absolutely awesome. I'm very happy to report that this has been an absolutely stunning park. So it's just 33 nautical miles. We only have 2 more waypoints after this. We only have 1 more waypoint after this. Once we turn here, we'll head left, go to Shaver Lake, and then make our way down to Johnston Field. And that will wrap up our final flight, final part of it for today. Really cool stuff. But okay, I got the images posted. So this is Kings Canyon National Park officially been posted. So all you guys now have access to the information posted here. I posted the pics here. Some absolutely gorgeous ones today. Mm-hmm. So now that we officially returned here, we're going to turn left. This is the rest of this area, of course. So I do want to give you a bit of a preview for Isle Royale National Park. Now, if you guys aren't aware about Isle Royale, it's in northern Michigan. It's located in a small island of Isle Royale, as well as 400 small islands around Lake Superior, Michigan. And it's the 5th largest lake island in the world, with an area around 206 square miles. And it's established in 1940, and it's even become a UNESCO World Heritage Biosphere Site in 1980. Some really cool areas, though. Check out here at the park. So yeah, we'll take a float plane for this one, and we explore this park. So yeah, absolutely gorgeous scenery today. absolutely gorgeous. So of course, so yeah, absolutely stunning. So a bit of a bit of a preview as well, of course, when we get back, of course. So basically, for recap, for those who've been here who missed the beginning of the stream, I will be heading out of town, of course, on next week. So I'll be gone until April 25th. So I'll be in Europe on a 14-day trip, 14-day cruise in Europe, visiting the Mediterranean for the first time. So I'll be missing all of you guys, of course. But of course, when we get back, we have 3 streams all starting at 10 a.m. my time, or 1500 Zulu time. Zulu time is mainly 5 hours ahead, so it would be 1500 Zulu would be Wednesday, would be our first stream coming back, of course, would be on the Wednesday. We'll do some flights in Switzerland. And I'm going to take the PC-6 for that one because, well, it's a Swiss-made plane in Switzerland, which will be quite fun to do. But yeah, it's going to be a mix of GA and airliners. I've already made a few GA flight plans. So this is Shaver Lake. Pretty popular area for a lot of recreation activities here at Shaver Lake. So we'll get to this area here at Shaver Lake. Popular for recreation. Popular for mainly recreation, of course. It did serve as a late mill pond for the Shaver Sawmill. So that is Shaver Lake itself. And this was also a film location for 2 different reality TV series, as well as the HBO Max reality show Karma in 2019 was filmed here in this lake. Mm. Mm. So pretty interesting stuff. So we'll finally turn right. So our final airport's Johnson Airport. So that's where we're going to be going last. 260. So here we go. We're going to continue to. So our airport's going to be a bush strip. Huh. It's going to be a pretty small little bush strip somewhere. We'll have to fly to. So pretty small bush strip, of course. Yeah, for this aircraft of the Savage Norton, by the way, you can build your own Norton. Yeah, for 264,000 euros to build your own little bush aircraft. Who knew bush flying could be expensive? So I think our airport's down over here, which is actually really scenic. Scenic little bush stop. So there we go. We're about to make our descent into our last stop. So. Bum, 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 bum. There we go. Huh, that was easy. That was pretty easy. So this is Johnston Field, everyone. That was a pretty difficult landing, but not impossible. So guys, thank you all so much for being here on this morning stream. I hope you guys enjoyed this flight. Absolutely stunning scenery at Kings Canyon today. So the major question is going to be, we'll be seeing you guys in about a couple weeks. See you on our next stream. Our next stream will be in April. Will be in April 29th will be our next stream. So we're going to go say hello to our person we're going to raid. We're going to raid our good friend Kaharia today. So we'll say hello to her. So, guys, thank you all so much for joining me on this last flight before I head on out. So take care, guys, and have a great time while I'm gone. Take care, everyone, and see you soon. Goodbye, everyone.